I'm Krava, a courier transporting goods across the galaxy. This particular job seemed routine: deliver a shipment of medical supplies to the remote planet Zendil-7. Little did I know the adventure that awaited me. As my ship descended through the violet clouds of Zendil-7, I caught a glimpse of the desolate, rocky surface below. Not a hospitable place. I landed the craft and did a system check before heading out. Air composition safe for humanoid life check. Extreme temperature warnings check. Hostile fauna advisories double check. Just another day. Grabbing the cargo from the hold, I stepped out into the baking heat. The twin suns of the Zendil system bore down mercilessly. I activated the Enviro shield on my suit and started the long trek across the barren plain to the colony's medical outpost. That's when I heard it, a faint, high-pitched whine cutting through the still air. I stopped and listened carefully, turning slowly to locate the source of the noise. There it was again, seeming to come from a cluster of boulders up ahead. As I approached cautiously, I saw a tiny creature writhing in the dust, emitting those plaintive cries. It looked something like a serpent hatchling with stubby legs and a delicate frill around its neck. Pale blue in color and no more than a handspan long. Definitely not something I'd expect to encounter on this desolate rock. Using my suit's bioscanner, I confirmed it was a warm-blooded vertebrate, likely newly hatched given its size. But there were no other life readings in the vicinity. Had this poor thing been abandoned? The thought made my heart ache. "Easy there, little one," I said softly, slowly extending a hand. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature stilled at the sound of my voice, fixing me with dark, liquid eyes. It seemed to sense I meant no harm and made no move to flee as I gently scooped it up. Its tiny body was hot to the touch and trembling faintly. Cradling it in my hands, I checked the bioscan again. Definitely dehydrated and showing signs of malnutrition. How long had this hatchling been out here alone? I looked around once more, seeing no sign of its parents, or others of its kind. Torn between wanting to help and needing to complete my delivery, I wavered. But one glance into those trusting eyes made up my mind. I couldn't just leave it to die out here in the wastes. Pulling an insulated container from my pack, I made a little nest and placed the creature inside with some rations and a bottle of electrolyte solution. "Don't worry, I've got you," I murmured. "You're safe now." With the container secured in my pack, I set off again towards the colony, picking up my pace. The sooner I delivered these supplies, the sooner I could get expert help for my new charge. The walk seemed to take forever with my urgency driving me on. But at last I crested a rise and saw the compact cluster of prefab buildings that made up the outpost. I broke into a jog, heading straight for the medical module. A young woman in a biohazard suit looked up in surprise as I burst through the airlock doors. "Can I help?" "This creature needs medical attention," I interrupted breathlessly, pulling out the container to show her the occupant. "Dehydration, malnutrition at the very least. Maybe more." She blinked at me for a moment, then snapped into professional mode. "Of course, let me take a look." Ushering me over to an exam table, she carefully extracted the trembling hatchling and began scanning it with a metasensor. "You're right, it's in pretty bad shape. But a few days on intravenous fluids and a dietary regimen, and it should bounce back." Relief washed over me to hear the prognosis. Thank the stars. I was so worried when I found it alone out there. "You did the right thing bringing it in," the medic said with an approving nod. "This is a Zendilian sandrunner, extremely endangered. Their homeworld was devastated in the Crone Wars, and they were thought to be extinct in the wild. So that's what this little guy was, the last remnant of a once thriving species, fighting for survival against extinction. No wonder it seemed so frail and lost." Watching the medic carefully hook up a nutrient IV, I felt a sudden, fierce protectiveness. "What's going to happen to it?" I asked. I don't want to just abandon it again if there's no one to take care of it properly. The medic's expression turned regretful. Honestly, we're not equipped to provide long-term care and rehabilitation for a creature like this. Our role is to stabilize and treat immediate medical needs, the medic continued, her voice tinged with regret. For long-term care, this little one will need a specialized facility. Ideally, one with experience in rehabilitating endangered species. I nodded, my mind racing. Is there such a place nearby? She shook her head. Not on Zendil 7. The nearest facility would be on the planet Elysium, in the neighboring star system. They have a renowned xenobiology center there. Elysium. That was a good 3-day journey from here, even with my ship's advanced propulsion system. But I couldn't just leave the Sand Runner to its fate. I had to get it to Elysium. Can you keep it stable until I can arrange transport? I asked, my resolve hardening. Of course, she replied, her eyes softening. We'll do everything we can. I watched as she carefully placed the tiny creature into a specialized incubator, its frail body now connected to a series of tubes and monitors. The Sand Runner's eyes fluttered closed, its breathing evening out as the fluids began to work their magic. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'll be back as soon as I can. With a final glance at the incubator, I turned and headed back to my ship. The medical supplies delivery was still pending, but I knew the colony could wait a few more hours. Right now, my priority was securing a safe passage for the Sand Runner. Back on my ship, I contacted the colony's administrator, a grizzled veteran named Captain Jarek. He listened patiently as I explained the situation. Understood, Krava, he said, his voice crackling over the comms. We'll manage with the supplies we have for now. You do what you need to do. Thank you, Captain, I replied, relieved. I'll make this quick. I set a course for Elysium, my mind already planning the logistics of the journey. As the ship's engines roared to life, I couldn't help but think about the little creature that had been left behind. It was a fragile thread of life in a harsh universe, and I was determined to see it survive. Before departing, I made arrangements with the medic at the outpost to ensure the Sand Runner would be transported safely. She assured me that they had a secure stasis pod designed for delicate life forms, which would keep the creature stable during the journey. I watched as they carefully placed the Sand Runner into the pod, its tiny body now surrounded by a protective field. Don't worry, the medic said, her voice gentle. We'll make sure it gets to Elysium safely. With the stasis pod secured in my ship's cargo hold, I felt a wave of relief. Now I could focus on the journey ahead, knowing that the Sand Runner was in good hands. The journey to Elysium was uneventful, giving me plenty of time to think. I found myself wondering about the Sand Runner's family. Had they been wiped out by predators? Or had they simply moved on, leaving one of their own behind? The thought was a heavy one, and it made me even more determined to see this mission through. Upon arrival at Elysium, I was greeted by Dr. Alara Voss, the head of the Xenobiology Center. She was a tall, imposing woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, but her eyes softened when I explained the situation. We'll take good care of it, she assured me, her voice firm. Our team has extensive experience with endangered species. We'll do everything we can to ensure its survival. I watched as the Sand Runner was transferred to a state-of-the-art facility, its tiny body now surrounded by a team of experts. Dr. Voss kept me updated on its progress, and I was relieved to hear that it was responding well to treatment. Over the next few days, I found myself visiting the center frequently, checking on the Sand Runner's progress. It was a strange feeling, this attachment to a creature I had only just met. But there was something about its vulnerability, its fight for survival, that resonated with me. One evening, as I sat by the incubator, Dr. Voss joined me. You know, she said, her voice thoughtful, we could use someone like you here. Someone who cares about these creatures as much as we do. I looked at her, surprised. Me? But I'm just a courier. She smiled. A courier who went out of their way to save a life. That's more than just a job, Krava. That's a calling. I thought about her words long after she had left. Could I really give up my life as a courier? The freedom of the open skies, the thrill of new worlds? But then I looked at the sand runner, now stronger and more vibrant, and I knew the answer. The next morning, I found Dr. Voss in her office. "I've been thinking about your offer," I said, my voice steady. "And I think I'd like to stay. At least for a while." She smiled, her eyes warm. "Welcome to the team, Krava." And so, my life took a new direction. I became a part of the Xenobiology Center, working alongside Dr. Voss and her team to care for endangered species from across the galaxy. It was challenging work, but it was also deeply rewarding. The Sand Runner, who I had named Zephyr, became a symbol of hope for all of us. It thrived under our care, growing stronger with each passing day. And as I watched it flourish, I knew I had made the right choice. One day, as I was tending to Zephyr, Dr. Voss approached me with a smile. "We have some good news," she said. "We've located a small population of sand runners on a nearby planet. It seems Zephyr isn't the last of its kind after all." My heart soared at the news. "That's incredible. When can we reunite them?" "We're making arrangements now," she replied. "It will take some time, but we'll get there." As I looked at Zephyr, now a healthy and vibrant creature, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This journey had started with a simple act of compassion, but it had led to something far greater. It had led to a new purpose, a new family, and a new hope for the future. And as I stood there, surrounded by the hum of the Xenobiology Center, I knew that this was just the beginning. There were countless other creatures out there, waiting for someone to care, someone to fight for them, and I was ready to be that someone. The day of the reunion finally arrived. We had prepared a special habitat for Zephyr and the other sand runners, a place where they could thrive and rebuild their population. As we transported Zephyr to the new habitat, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. Would Zephyr recognize its own kind? Would it be accepted by the others? These questions swirled in my mind as we approached the enclosure. The moment we released Zephyr into the habitat, my worries melted away. The other sand runners approached cautiously at first, but soon they were interacting, their frills fluttering in a display of recognition and acceptance. It was a beautiful sight, and I felt a lump in my throat as I watched them. Dr. Voss stood beside me, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Krava. You gave Zephyr a second chance." "No," I replied, my voice choked with emotion. "We did it. All of us." As the days turned into weeks, the sand runners began to thrive in their new home. Zephyr, once a fragile and abandoned hatchling, had become a symbol of resilience and hope. And in turn, it had given me a new sense of purpose and belonging. I continued my work at the Xenobiology Center, each day bringing new challenges and new rewards. I found joy in the small victories, the moments of connection with the creatures we cared for. And through it all, I knew that I had found my true calling. One evening, as I sat by the habitat, watching the sand runners play, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This journey had been unexpected, but it had led me to a place where I could make a real difference. And for that, I was grateful. As the stars twinkled overhead, I whispered a silent promise to Zephyr and all the other creatures we had yet to save. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." And with that, I knew that my journey was far from over. There were still countless lives to touch, countless stories to be written, and I was ready to face them all, with compassion and determination guiding my way.